College University Admissions Officers of Reddit, what's the dumbest thing you've seen on an application or essay? I am not an applicant, I am an applicant. I'm using this. The last time this question was asked about admissions essays, I shared the story of my favorite English teacher marking provincial exams and coming across some gem students. Quoting because lazy. My favorite teacher in high school used to grade provincial English exams. Basically they put you in a room and you rate essays out of 5 all day. You have to do one paper every 5-10 minutes. And you're supposed to do it in absolutely stone cold silence. He's in the middle of grading a pretty blasé paper and he can just sense the guy beside him losing his crap. He's practically convulsing, he's trying so hard not to laugh. He cracks and is openly howling and people start to get up and gather around to see what's funny. The kid ended every single sentence in exclamation marks. We went to the mall today. The mall was really packed. We went to buy shoes. The kind I wanted weren't there. I was sad, but then I bought another pair of shoes. They're okay. I like my new shoes. Who does that? I reviewed applications for fellowships at a university hospital. One application letter was written in text speak, including emoticons. In defense of this doctor, she was an international applicant and online chatting was probably how she learned English. I had a student tell me she was applying because it was her dream to study under Professor Emeritus. She had read all of his papers and follow a Prof Emeritus work for years. She asked me if he preferred to be addressed as Dr. Emeritus. Oh my god, I thought you were using that as a fake name until I read the post again. That's hilarious. My aunt works in college admissions and complains about the kids who attach bribe money, usually a $5 or a $20, sometimes jokingly, sometimes serious. She said she rejects those applications without looking at them. She also complains about the helicopter parents who call in and want exact detail on their kids' admission status, how well the application looked, what they thought of the essay, etc. Good god, I thought that the bribe money thing was only on AP tests. I work with adults with special needs and we had one person participating in the program who had what we would have referred to as Asperger's syndrome. Nice guy, very sharp. He was writing an essay for admission and he asked me to read it over. He started it with "I am qualified to be a part of your institution because I survived." I was ready to roll my eyes, but I read on and dang, this kid rolled 4 ones for every stat during character creation. He'd been hit by a car, electrocuted, nearly drowned, and been hospitalized 6 or 7 times for various infections over the years. He wasn't stupid and his family weren't monsters. He was just possessed of a preternatural ability to attract bad events and then to survive them. The universe had tried very, very hard to kill this kid and he somehow managed to dodge the overwhelming majority of it. I told him not to change a word. He got in. It's like you want your school to be the epicenter for the apocalypse. Yeesh. In my 10th year working professionally in college admissions, the dumbest thing is the sheer number of parents who blatantly admit, out loud, in actual words to us, that they are the ones filling out their students' college admissions and scholarship applications. No shame or even a hint that there might be something wrong with this. I've seen 2 essays written by parents, not just essays where you could tell from the writing that it was written by an adult, but essays by mothers written in first person about their sons. Needless to say, neither got in, and one probably would have otherwise since he had the grades. So a few days ago, someone from the CSU system came to my high school to talk about essays. One example was a girl who apparently decided her topic was on a Korean boy band, or more specifically, how obsessed she was with it. She pulled all-nighters to make some fan website that became popular to the point of the band noticing. Went as far as to learn Korean because screw English translations, and said that despite seeming really crazy, it was proof that she was very dedicated to whatever she did. The admission guy said he approved her. This sounds crazy, but it's really impressive. My friend learned fluent Mandarin solely because she has a huge Chinese boy fetish and now she's getting dong left and right in China. This may not be exactly what you're looking for, but I used to intern in the admissions office. There was a policy that if you didn't bring in ACT scores, you had to take a placement test, not an entrance exam, just a placement test. Community college. If you did bring in ACT scores and had at least a 12 in each section. For those unfamiliar, highest possible score is 36. Very rare. You could start out in standard classes. Below that you had to take the placement test and potentially take remedial courses. This girl comes in one day and plops down her application and everything. I run through it all and inform her she'll have to take the placement test. But I thought if I brought in my ACT scores I wouldn't have to take the placement test. You don't have to take the placement test if you score a 12 or above in each section. Well, I didn't really look at it. What did I make? Look again to make sure I read it right over all 6. Oh, is that bad? It means you have to take the placement test. Here are the forms you need. I used to be an administrator in an admissions office and would read applications before passing them on to the people who make the actual decisions. My favorites included someone's personal statement that said I think so far outside the box. There is no box. The person that included a copy of their pleasure boat driving license. The Prince of Maths who included a 45 minutes DVD of himself solving equations interspersed with dance routines. The guy that submitted his personal statement showing the track changes, including comments such as they can never say no to you and summon the tiger within. And the many people who offered me bribes despite explaining until I was blue in the face that I had no effect on the decision. And also it was illegal. The Prince of Maths who included a 45 minutes DVD of himself solving equations interspersed with dance routines. Heck, that might be YouTube gold. I worked at a university that did not require admissions essays unless they were specifically asked for. This meant you were waitlisted, for example, or something worrying stood out on your application. The rest of the essays were only read by the data entry crew. One student had an extremely large amount of absences in his/her high school career and was asked to explain why. The student said she had an intense fear of worms, and because she walked to school, was unable to attend when it had recently rained, as the sidewalks would be covered in worms. It is an unusual explanation, but specific phobia can cause irrational avoidance behavior. As an admission counselor, I see a lot of dumb essays. I get more frustrated with dumb emails asking questions that are easily answered on the website. Do you have a nursing program number? No, we don't. But the essays that most people are referencing here are not dumb but memorable, which are the ones that get you accepted. Compelling essays, even about complex theft, cilantro, beans, arrests. Once I read an essay about a student's arrest, the actual arrest, not the crime, are the ones that get acceptance letters. Do you realize how many thousands of essays we read each year? If it sticks out, we'll advocate for you when it comes to committee time. I processed applications for a grad school admissions office when I first started working at my university, and until a few years ago a lot of paper application materials were still being mailed in, so I opened some doozies. 1. Math PhD. Applicant's essay literally said I like math in red crayon. I think he figured his 4.0 GPA and awesome grade quant score was all he needed. He didn't get in. 2. International applicants sent in a photo of them conducting a military band in a chicken suit. I have no clue why. It went up on the wall of WTF in our office. 3. My favorite. A disturbed, paranoid woman applied to PhD in psychology in person by coming to the admissions office and hand filling out one of the rare few paper applications we still had lying around, then promptly pulled a letter from a recommender from her pocket that was on a folded up piece of paper, not in a sealed envelope or anything. We explained to her it's customary for such documents to be in a sealed envelope with a signature across the seal to show it hasn't been interfered with by the applicant. She demanded an envelope, which she shoved the letter in, licked, sealed, then wrote her name across the seam. She came by a handful of times after that to hand deliver documents for her application as she didn't trust the US Postal Service and said it would deliberately lose her letters because the government doesn't want people of her race to get higher education. My favorite was when a letter of recommendation arrived for her, this time in the mail in a sealed envelope sent by the recommender himself. It said, and I quote, "The only way X should be admitted to the graduate program in psychology is as a patient." The recommender was a pastor, and when she finally received her inevitable rejection from the psych program, she mailed the graduate school an itemized bill for her application and gray fees, gas for all her trips to the university, and stamps for things she never mailed us through the racist USPS, because she wanted us to reimburse her. The application asked about residency status, that is, international, US citizen, permanent resident. The applicant checked visa and wrote in MasterCard next to it. They knew what they were doing. The reasons that I have for wishing to go to Harvard are several. I feel that Harvard can give me a better background and a better liberal education than any other university. I have always wanted to go there, as I have felt that it is not just another college, but is a university with something definite to offer. Then too, I would like to go to the same college as my father. To be a Harvard man is an enviable distinction, and one that I sincerely hope I shall attain. The 23rd of April, 1935, John F. Kennedy. My friend wrote one about how he invented penicillin. He got accepted. Crap, I should write one about how I invented MRSA. Qualifications or certifications. I'm ordained and can marry people in Minnesota. Turns out he wasn't fricking with us. Seen a few years back when I was still working for admissions. I got into my selective college based on my essay and ACT score because my HS grades were crap. Anyway, my essay was called Romancing the Secretary and it was about all the school secretaries I knew growing up and going through school. I was a weird kid with a host of issues, so I spent a lot of time in the school offices, getting to know the secretaries. They were lovely women who got to know me and protected me from bullies and some of the teachers who hated me. Whenever I couldn't deal with class or was having a bad time, I'd go see the secretaries and they'd cheer me up, excuse me from class, and make me feel like a valued human being instead of like a worthless piece of crap. I didn't really have friends in high school, but I had the secretaries and also the janitors, and they protected me and kept me sane. They were the only people to ever acknowledge my birthdays or even sign my ebooks. I met the guy who read my essay and he said it made him cry, cause he was the weird kid once. 2. He said he put my application on the top of the stack and knew that I had to go to that college, because he knew I would find my people there, and sure enough I did. My essay was so awful that my principal got mad at me for disrespecting the school. You have to post it now. I had a student who never had their application matched up with their other materials, test scores, transcripts, etc., because the social security numbers didn't match. That's because their mother had filled out the application and written in her SSN instead. I work in admissions at an online college. We work in a physical office, and you'd better believe we get plenty of crazy things funneling through. One of my favorites was an application we received for a 27-ish-year-old student who was applying for a graduate degree. She had worked in her field for several years with a bachelor's. A few weeks after receiving this application, we started getting calls from her mother demanding day-to-day progress reports on the status of the application. Helicopter parents are crazy. We also get plenty of people who opt to write things such as, "Is this really necessary? And I don't have time for this with my busy work schedule," where they are supposed to attach a resume. Needless to say, if you don't have time to update your own dang resume, you probably don't have time to take on a full college workload. The writing prompt for my top choice college when I applied was, "What would you do with an industrial-sized jar of mustard?" One of my high school friends wrote about how corrupted the UC admissions office is. It was hilarious, but the arguments he made were actually fair and thought-provoking. He got into Berkeley. I got accepted into Cornell University by writing an essay about how much I hate cilantro. Dang, you must really hate cilantro. I apparently dropped several curse words in a scholarship essay. The award covered about 50% of tuition every semester. I was accepted, and was later told while some of the reviewers were offended, "We appreciated your honesty. Always proofread, y'all." I definitely online submitted an essay to a prof where I forgot to change the file name from duckthusbullcraplanet.doc. Oh well. My sister wrote her MIT essay about how she games a large department store's pricing inconsistencies to turn a profit, buy on sale, return at regular price, etc. She had a pretty complicated system going. She essentially wrote about how she steals from department stores. She got in. She also discussed the ethics of it, and at the time we were pretty poor, but yet. For my essay for the University of Chicago, I explained that I really didn't feel like writing an essay about anything they asked me to write about, and so I was just going to write short answers instead. I then wrote really sarcastic answers to each of them and didn't even answer one. I got in. That's genius. I could see how they would love it though if it were well done. Basically, as long as you're a good writer and it's well done, you can do whatever. But it's a big risk, and I'm not that clever or skilled of a writer, so I've been sticking to the prompts and playing it safe. Let's see where I get in. I go to Rice and my entire Common App essay was about Lisa Simpson. Married men of Reddit, what was that dumb thing you did during your dating phase that you can't believe your wife ended up overlooking? I get very nervous around women that are into me, and especially when I know she's watching me do something, even something trivial. On an early date, we went to the local shop to pick up some things for a picnic, including some gum. I was thinking really hard and aware that I was being watched. I had this: money on the counter, gum in your mouth, money on the counter, gum in your mouth. Easy. Suffice to say, when I put the gum on the counter and the €2 coin in my mouth, the cashier was baffled and my girlfriend, now wife, was crying with laughter. Turned her down when she suggested we go on a date. Read as, I'm super awkward. I was working for Starbucks. She was a regular customer. I was new in town and noticed her a couple times. She was a regular customer and we got to some small talk, chatting about places to eat. She said there's an amazing taco place down the road. We should go sometime. I misheard her, thinking she said you should go sometime. I replied with I'll definitely check it out. I handed her a drink and she left very awkwardly. She was back in the next day and, against all odds, I was able to clear up the misunderstanding and I wrote my number on her Starbucks cup. We went to that taco place for our first date and she was right. It was amazing. 3 years married and 2 kids later. Really glad she saw through my awkwardness. I forgot her name once when introducing her to a friend. This was maybe a month into our relationship. I was all like, hey, and by the way, this is my girlfriend. I have ADD, and every now and then my brain pulls a stunt like this. My mom was the same. As kids, we'd get called by the name of one of our dogs now and then. I thought it was hilarious. My sister not so much. Not my story, but my parents. Some backstory. My dad has a brother who's only a couple years older. Growing up, they'd commonly try to steal food off each other's plates just to be buttholes to each other. This was remedied by plate guarding and defensive maneuvers with utensils if hands got too close. On my parents' first date, my mom reached for something to try off my dad's plate and he instinctively stabbed her hand with his fork. Drew blood and everything. He was obviously mortified. Glad my mom was crazy enough to keep dating, marry, and procreate with a fork stabber. On our second date, I arrived 1h late. When I went to greet her with a little hug, yep, that's how we greet people around here, I accidentally knocked her phone off her hand. It hit the ground and cracked the screen, but I wasn't sure if it was already cracked. I apologized. She said it was okay and that the screen was already like that before. Almost a year later, she confessed that I actually broke her phone that day. She had just gotten it from her mom. All phones she ever had were second-hand, very simple ones, and she couldn't afford a new one at the time, but still she lied and kept using the broken phone so I wouldn't feel bad. My heart sank. We've been married for 2 years now and I've given her a brand new flagship phone every year ever since. True consumerist love. Sent from my iPhone 11. Wife was a devout animal lover and activist. Planned proposal at a fancy Tokyo restaurant that only takes 3 tables a night and has 11 courses, which was filled with all sorts of innovative things so you're never quite sure what's coming next. In between one of the courses, the chef brings out a cute little glass bowl for us to play with some squid. The chef informs us these are firefly squid that's local to the bay. My wife is delighted and practically named them. 2 courses later they reappeared as entrees, floating on a glass plate lit up from below and arranged to look like they're swimming. She still said yes but have never let me forget that I took her on literally the worst dining experience she had, and I had paid the most ever for. Played Weird Al CDs non-stop for a 6-hour car trip to the beach. She didn't ditch me but haven't been allowed to play Weird Al in her presence for the past 24 years. Got tickets to see him this year on our anniversary and knew better than to ask her to join me, so I took a couple of my kids that appreciate the finer things in life. Best anniversary gift ever. Great show. Soon to be wife here. When we first met, it was during an introduction class or something like that. He kept kissing the teacher's butt and talking way too much and just being kind of a show off. I wanted to punch him in the face. Come to find out he's in almost all my classes, and for lunch a couple of girls and I decided to go to McDonald's. He invited himself. I was annoyed. 2 months into our relationship he confessed that he saw me and was intrigued and wanted to get to know me, so he did everything to get my attention. He's an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I'm surprised he managed to actually get my attention. We've been together for 10 years, getting married on the 23rd of September. On my first date with my wife, we got to talking about tattoos. I have a rule that if I have an idea for a tattoo, I sit on it for a while to see if I really would still want it. I mentioned this to her and explained how glad I am that I do this because otherwise I'd be covered in Tool, the band, tattoos or some other dumb crap. She rolled up her sleeve to show me that she had the lyrics to one of their songs tattooed across her arm. Well, you did tell her you liked the band and wanted to tattoo them on your body at some point. That's way better than having to show your Tool lyric tattoo to someone who doesn't even know the band. 5 years ago, after dating for 2 weeks, I accepted a job offer on another continent. I told her we didn't know each other well enough for me to pass up an opportunity like that, and if it was meant to be, it would work itself out. Well, it was meant to be and we got married this spring. We had a couple great dates and things were looking promising. Then I got super busy at work and didn't contact her for about 3.5 weeks without giving her a heads up. She decided to move during this time. After things calmed down at work, I text her again. We worked things long distance and finally got married. She reminds me that I didn't ask her out again for a very long time, every few months. My husband kept calling me by the name of his previous girlfriend on our first date. I finally told him to give her a call because they clearly had unfinished business to talk about. He did, and she reminded him why he was happy to have her out of his life. And he never called me by her name again. 40 years later, and it seems to have worked out in my favor. Nicely handled. My husband broke my thumb one night when we were slightly tipsy. Horseplay got too rough and I think, drunk memory, he slammed my hand against something. We both heard the pop and I went to tears. Holy crap, that must have been one heck of an awkward night. Not the married man, but on probably our 3rd or 4th date, my man mixed our soups. I got a watermelon gazpacho, a cold soup, and he got a seafood bisque. I am a sharer, so we both tasted and didn't love mine, but we loved his. After the tasting, he boldly yet nervously states, "Mine is so great, I got this while pouring our 2 soups into one." It was the worst lukewarm thing I've ever tasted. 5 years later and we've never mixed soups again. Too risky. This would make me believe my date was some sort of psychopath. There's no reason that even 2 good soups of similar theme should be mixed. It defeats the entire freaking purpose of ordering a specific soup. Accidentally set her hair on fire with a match while lighting a cigarette. Not good. We are still married 29 years later. I don't smoke anymore. Reminds me of the story my grandpa told me. On his first date with my grandma, he wanted to see exactly how flammable hairspray was. She wears a lot, and he held up a match near her hair. She had a bit of hair missing for a while. I wouldn't have been out 100%. His dumbass antics have drastically declined though. Not me, but my first door neighbor's story. I didn't know their story until one day another friend told me what happened, and she confirmed it. She was at a party and caught him looking at her every now and then. She kinda liked him, so she decided to make the first move. She took a few shots for courage and went in. As time passed by, she continued to drink while talking to him and got pee drunk, like not being able to walk drunk. He was a type of guy that didn't drink that much at all and presumed she can drink a lot. But when she stood up from couch after a few hours, the alcohol swept her to the ground. So as a gentleman, he offered to carry her home. Note that was when we were late teens. No car, no money. So he started piggyback her home. That was like 30-45 minutes walk. Like normal sober walk. He managed to carry her on his back about 500 meters from her home and stopped to take a break for a moment. His back hurt him AF, so he decided to carry her in his arms. A few steps away, and he notices very unpleasant smell. Since he isn't from our parts and it was rural area, he asked barely conscious her, "What is that fricking stink?" She just mumbled, "I shat my pants," then proceeded to pass out in his arms, only coming back to mumble, "Frick sorry," and passing out again. So what guy does? He brings her home and lies her on floor, since he was afraid of messing up her bed or couch, and left home. But few moments after he comes back, wakes her up and asks would she mind if he helped her shower, since she can't sleep. 8HL shut up, mostly because it's not hygienic, safe, and her whole house and everything would smell. She agreed, and after he bathed her she asked him to sleep in her bed, in case she needed him. So one time I asked Guy how the frick did he got over that. He said they clicked at the first glance, and he just felt that he needs to take care of her because he took responsibility to bring her home all alright, and if she said no to bathing he would back off, but then won't be with her, cause crapping yourself while dead drunk is still understandable, but sleeping whole day like that would be too nasty. He laid beside her until she fell asleep, and then watched TV until she woke up. They were inseparable since then. Since that first date I have never seen them apart. It's been almost 15 years since then, and just recently they got beautiful little daughter. So many stories of relationships that start this way. It's almost as if the poo in their pants becomes fertilizer for their growing love. Gross, yet beautiful. We drank a lot on our second date, Ubered home. Next day went back to get his car, and it wasn't there. He was so devastated. He just bought it recently and it was stolen. We filed a police report. Took forever and just generally sucked. We walked to his friend's house nearby, and there was his car, perfectly unstolen. He drank so much he forgot he moved it before our date. Now, once in a while when we're trying to find our car in the grocery store parking lot or wherever, one of us will say it's stolen. Call the police. I was sitting on the couch as we were playing Wii bowling. She was standing behind the couch, lovingly holding me. I draw back the Wiimote and wham! I whack her in the face with the Wiimote at full strength. Her mom was also in the room. Soon as I saw playing Wii I knew. I didn't really do it, but I thought he would be weirded out anyways. Very first time he stayed at my house. After about 3 hours of my 2 male roommates trying to make him uncomfortable, we went to bed and he put his contacts in 2 shot glasses of water because he had no case with him. I don't know if that's a dumb thing to do. I've never worn them. Maybe we were drinking and that seemed like a good idea. Anyways, he had never had a pet and was kind of weirded out by my cat standing beside him and meowing at him all night. Is that normal? Is he mad at me or something? Woke up the next day to find out the cat drank all the water from the shot glasses. Contacts included. I had to help him home because he is seriously blind without them. He still wanted to see me again even though the night was weird, and the cat became his best friend, despite some initial skepticism on both their parts. He's seriously blind without them. He wanted to see me again. Nice. Insisted that everything in San Francisco was walking distance from everything else, and decided we should walk from Pier 39 to Golden Gate Park. It is walkable, but not third date walkable, or whatever shoes she happened to be wearing that day walkable. As someone unfamiliar with San Francisco, I googled it. 6.5 miles apart, a 2-hour walk according to Google, and by the looks of it, a crap ton of hills. Google is giving me a warning I've never seen before that walking directions may not reflect real world conditions, and it looks like the elevation changes back and forth a couple hundred feet more than once. My uncle didn't call his now wife for over a year after they first met and he got her number. He kept the paper she wrote it on and ended up finding it and calling her asking if she still remembered him and was still interested in going on a date. So what you're saying is there's always a chance. Wife here. About 3 weeks into dating, my husband thought it would be romantic to pick me up and spin me around in his driveway. Unfortunately, it was not his most brilliant idea and he tripped and we fell right onto the concrete next to my car. Reader, he landed on top of me. You cushioned his fall. How sweet of you. I can tell you for him. We were leaving his new apartment. Keep in mind we've been dating for a short amount of time. We haven't been through a lot of firsts yet, His apartment was on the back of the building, so we had to walk through a small passage to get to the other side in order to leave. Imagine this passage is slightly shadowed but the light shoots through it, so it creates this romantic silhouette. As we left his apartment and walked into this passage area, he grabs my hand and pulls me towards himself. I'm thinking, oh, he is going to put my hand around his waist. How romantic. Locks my hand on his butt and loudly farts. It was a very brave move for a new couple. We've been married for 13 years now. Given the amount of fart-related stories, I'm beginning to suspect that flatulence is actually a human mating call. Wife here. It's about 3 weeks into dating. My husband invited me to a house party at his best friend's place. We were playing beer pong, having fun. The other team is up. They toss the ball. I lean forward to try to block it. My now husband extends his hand out in front of me at the same time, catching the ball but at the same time hitting me in the eye and somehow pulling out 3/4 of my eyelashes. He felt terrible about it and tried to burn off his eyelashes in drunken sympathy. He hates when I bring it up, but I think it is the funniest story. She was about to sneeze and she was sitting half on my lap, so I kinda thought she was gonna sneeze on me and IDK what I was thinking, but I put my hand up to block her sneeze, except I had a glass in my hand and I blocked her own hand from covering her sneeze, and instead she slammed her face into my glass. Married 6 years now. She still has all her teeth. I made myself a burger for dinner before heading over to her place to hang out. Unfortunately, I'm not the best cook and left a little too much pink in that burger. While we were at her house, I bet her I could fit through the doggy door and crawled right through. Then she immediately closed it behind me and we raced to the front door. She won and she locked it. Now at this exact moment my bowels decided they had enough of that burger from earlier and I felt my stomach cramp. Luckily I held it all in and ran back to the back door with my cheeks clenched and starting knocking desperately in the door. She was laughing at first, but when she saw my face go suddenly serious and I said very calmly, I need you to open the door. Now please. She unlocked the door and asked if I was okay. I told her to stay downstairs and turn the TV up loud. She agreed but was very confused. So I ran upstairs and then had one of the most violent shoots of my whole life. I thought the worst was behind me until I went to wipe. And of course no TP. So she took my instructions really well, and when I yelled to her, texted her, and called her, I got no answer. After probably like 10 missed calls she finally answered and I asked her to bring me some TP and leave outside the door and try not to breathe on the way upstairs. She was great about it and immediately started making fun of me when I came back downstairs. Now quite a few years later, a couple, kids and cat, she's still making fun of me. Man, I was so expecting this story to end with you getting stuck in the doggy door and crapping your pants. We were taking a shower together and she was soaping up while I was under the hot water rinsing off, and she slipped and instead of helping her I pulled away, thinking for some reason that I'd already rinsed off and didn't want to get soapy. Thank God she caught herself on the shower curtain and didn't get hurt. She was not happy. My explanation of my faulty thinking didn't help at all either. We laugh about it now, but it took some serious smoothing over at the time. Oh yay, it's not like you are in the shower and can't just rinse again. I know what my husband would say, because I still tease him to this day. We had been dating for 2 weeks and were spooning on his futon, watching a movie. Out of nowhere he says, "I'm really sorry, I can't hold it in anymore," and rips a huge fart. My husband was a very clean, tight-knit, prudish kind of guy, so I couldn't help but let out the biggest laugh while he turned about as red as his beard. Little late to the party, but here's my story. When we had only been dating a month or so, my then boyfriend went to pick me up, I assume, and accidentally threw my head through the ceiling and gave me a concussion. He's 6 feet 8 inches and just really misjudged the distance. I also had a hard time getting used to his height and very regularly kneed him in the balls for about 2 years while cuddling, so I think we're even. We've been together 6 years now and proud to say we haven't injured each other in about 4. My first GF did that almost every time we cuddled too, but she was a sweetheart so it was alright. I had just started a job working with her and, unbeknownst to me at the time, her mom and I did not get along. My move was, "What's up with that thick B? Insert name." She said, "Oh, I'll tell my mom you said hi." I was dead. But hey, we are married 16 years so. It wasn't until after we were married that my wife told me that I almost didn't get a second date because I talked too much during the movie. I don't really remember it, but apparently I was leaning over every 30 seconds or so to tell her what I was thinking. Also, Valkyrie with Tom Cruise probably wasn't that great of a date movie, but it all worked out in the end. ETA, please forgive me my movie talking sins. AskReddit. I was a dumb teenager and she's really pretty. I was just quite anxious for things to go well. First date with my wife. End of the night I went to kiss her on the cheek being all sweet and crap. She thought I was leaning in for a hug and leaned in too. As she leaned in I turned my head and instead of her cheek I kissed her neck. Turned super red and embarrassed, then goodbye, and almost pushed her out of the door at my apartment. I immediately texted her sorry as well and she laughed. 3 years into marriage she apparently didn't care. On our first dinner date, my husband ordered a crap ton of food to show me his favorites at an Indian restaurant and forgot his wallet at home and only discovered doing so when the check had arrived. Cleared me out well over $100 and he was absolutely mortified. But we've been married for near 2 years, so my card got declined on the first lunch date we went on. The bill was less than $20. I was freaking mortified. 15 years married now. When we were dating, my husband and I were holding hands when he had to cough. Instead of letting go of my hand and covering his mouth, he continued to hold on, brought it up to his mouth and coughed into my hand. It was a dry cough. If it was anything more I would have run. My girlfriend did this to me and is still horrified whenever I catch her about to do it again. I didn't ask her for her number the first time we hung out, knowing I may never see her again. My brother got it and I later got it from him. She had an Xbox and staying the night. She woke up to me playing some arcade hockey game and providing commentary of goal. Smile goalie. Told my then boyfriend at the time that I wanted to have sex for the first time and he made me wait until his Magic the Gathering tournament was over. I decided to not shave for a few months since I was going to be serving in the jungles of Ecuador and wanted to be a wild man. As it turns out, a thick, blonde neckbeard isn't very attractive. We met our first day of high school, so there are many. My least, her family's, favorite is when I left her messages. This was before cell phones and her parents owned a business. They set their voicemail in a business manner in that you dial 1 for father, 2 for mother and so on. I found out later it was practice for their office line and that this line went to the same recording. No matter what, I left so many messages of call me ramblings. They were on vacation. Her 4 siblings and her parents listened to it all on speaker in a van. We kept it secret for years. Until we didn't. It's never stopped. I got fairly intoxicated and decided to tie a towel around my shoulders while completely naked and run in front of her on FaceTime screaming, "Look at my dangle." Yes, but she does remember you. When I kneeled to propose I landed on a sharp rock and we had to go to the ER because it lodged in my kneecap. Everything. Just, really everything. Our first kiss is the one that sticks out in my mind. We kissed and right as we kissed some air moves in my throat. Sounded like a burp but it wasn't. It seemed like I burped right into her mouth and I was mortified. She now knows it wasn't a burp, but at the time, not so much. I'm such a lucky fool and had some big blunders early while learning who I am and who she is. I'm lucky someone so wonderful saw past the stupid young person I was. I hate those esophagus gurgles. My wife and I get them. I get gut gurgles like that, too. Sounds like a fart, but it's just my stomach moving around. Transitioning from that uncomfortable to the comfortable phase, I was sitting across the room while she did homework. I farted pretty loudly and she looked me in the eyes and fired back. Luckily I had another in the chamber and asserted my dominance, to my surprise, which she matched for a second time, but even louder. Having this all happen in a span of 2 seconds and thinking it was pretty funny, I tried to top her by forcing one more out to reign supreme. Well, let's just say it wasn't a fart I forced out. One of her favorite stories to tell close friends and family. We've been married for going on 4 years though, so I'll guess it all worked out for me. TLDR, crap yourself in front of potential mates if you wanna get married. No guts, no glory. I'm the wife. Probably a year into us dating we fought about something neither of us can remember now. To make up for it he went and bought us both dessert, which was a sweet gesture. Of course he went and did it right after dinner, so I was still full and said I would shower and eat it when I finished my shower. Well, when I was in the shower he decided for some godforsaken reason to eat the dessert he bought for me, after eating his own serving of it. Everyone who has heard the story is very surprised our relationship lasted after that night. I did bring it up in my vows as an example of how I'll love him even when it's not the easiest thing to do. When we were first dating, my husband had a massive night out drinking. I was trialing some antidepressant medication and was a ball of anxiety. Barely slept all night. I woke up to texts from him saying he had grabbed some bacon and egg rolls for breakfast but was locked out. I got up and found him passed out in my doorway and he'd eaten both rolls. Sucker. I once spear tackled my then girlfriend out of misplaced enthusiasm in high school. I was excited to see her and handled it as badly as was possible. It was in front of a bunch of our friends and I ended up knocking the wind out of her and making her cry. That was about 17 years ago, and we're still together. I also licked my plate at a fancy restaurant because the salad dressing was so good. She still brings that one up every few years. Edit. My most upvoted comment ever is me recounting my most shameful relationship fails. The internet is weird. Plate lickers unite. So, basically you're man puppy. The night I met my husband, he stared at me while I was sleeping. For 4 hours straight. It's been 3 years. He still stares at me until I scold him for it. Then he waits until he thinks I won't notice and starts staring again. I love him to the moon and back, even though he'd sure as heck stare at me the entire trip. My GF does this all the time. Although flattering, it's still pretty creepy to wake up to. What was the dumbest assignment you were given in school? In my 8th grade English class we had a South African teacher who really wanted to teach art instead. We read maybe 2 books the entire years, but we made about 15 paintings related to books we read on our own. Right before winter break, she told us we would each be writing a 50-page fiction book over the next month and a half, including the break. We had to make a proposal and summary of our story and present it to the class for a grade. Barely anyone worked on their book over the break, which really peed the teacher off. I started writing my book 10 days before it was due. At one point I wrote 20 pages in a day, but usually did 4-6 pages a day. Naturally, my book was flailing nonsense mostly lifted from Magic, The Gathering lore, and it kind of just ended at a certain point, but I spent a crapload of time working on it, so whatever. The assignment was brutal for an 8th grader, especially coupled with other homework, so I was just happy with writing the full 50 pages. When we turned our books in, one of my friends told me he only wrote 20 pages of actual content and the rest was random words strung together, and another friend only wrote 25 pages. I was pretty proud of myself for legitimately trying. Then, our teacher had us sell our books to her by wearing dress clothes and pitching our stories to her. We received 3 grades for that, but she didn't even grade us on the actual books or even read them. My friends who bullshitted the assignment made the same grades as me. I could have given her 50 pages of Greeking and gotten the same grade. It was the most fruitless freaking thing I've ever done, and she didn't even give us the books back. No matter how many times our parents asked, it was without a doubt the worst assignment I've ever done, and nothing else has even come close. That hurts my feels. The teacher for my AP government class used to make us grade the tests and papers from his other classes because we were smart enough to learn the material on our own. We never really complained about it because grading tests is more fun than doing actual work. But in the end it kinda sucked cause most of us did bad on the AP exams. There are 3 branches of the government and by the time the AP exams rolled around, we had only gone over 2 in class. Sounds like a super crappy teacher. In Spanish class we had to write a haiku in English. This is Spanish class. We should be learning Spanish. Teach fricking Spanish. I went to an abstinence-only school district. In 8th grade health class, we took brown paper lunch bags, wrote my abstinence on them in magic marker and decorated them, then filled them with slips of paper listing reasons we should stay abstinent. We were encouraged to write things like I'll lose my self-respect, I might get an STD, etc. Then we had to carry these dang things around for a week. Our teacher could stop us at any time in class or in the hallway and demand to see it, and we lose points for not having it. I drank a cup of water and rated it. This was for a senior stats class in high school. This was a test grade. The 7th of August 2010. Too much water. In high school we had to write a letter about a rule or policy we didn't like and address it to someone in a high position at a company or in the government or whatever. Everyone thought it was just an exercise, so most of us just wrote a letter to the principal about a stupid school rule that we didn't like. Turns out the teacher actually sent every letter without telling us. One at a time we were called into the principal's office and about 3/4 of the class got detentions for it. That's such BS. I got a punishment exercise once that was to write about the life of a ping pong ball. Had to be 400 words, so I think I started it off with I was bought for £3.99. Then I was taken out of the box and my life consisted of ping pong. Ping pong for another 378 times. I was given another one for being a smartass. On an exam in university we had to make a PowerPoint presentation, but not with a computer or anything. No, that would be too reasonable. Instead we had to draw a bunch of boxes on white paper and fill them in with pictures, words and whatnot. Coloring was expected. This was in a 3rd year engineering course. We wrote letters to Santa. Then a month or 2 later, the teacher read us a story which mentioned Santa not being real. Yeah, high school sucks. We had to take a test to find out our social class, as if we didn't all already know. I am sorry Timmy, you're in the poor class and can't associate with your friend Jackie anymore. Go sit with Martin, but Martin smells like a pig's butthole. Well, get used to it Timmy, because you're about to get crap on your whole life. We once had a crossword in chemistry. Crosswords are stupid assignments anyway, but this one took the cake. Instead of clues to figure out and write in blanks, the clues were the words. The assignment was literally to copy the words into the blanks. The teacher used some old Windows 95 program to make them. The program could make either crosswords or word searches. I'm pretty sure she meant to make a word search and made a crossword by accident, but you think she would have realized at some point. She did realize, but said frick it, I don't want extra work. Go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and write a paper on the experience. It felt like such an invasion of privacy. I had an English teacher in high school. It was his first year teaching there. That was not well liked for some of his policies regarding his class. He knew this and towards the end of the year, maybe 3/4s in, gave us a choice of 2 assignments. A very long essay about the characters in some book we were reading, or a 1-page letter addressing why we don't like him and what he could do to change. It turns out, only myself and 3 other kids in class chose the letter. How do I know it was only 3 other kids? Because he reported us all to the principal, and we were called in one day to get a lecture about how disrespectful we had been to the teacher, and we all got in school suspensions. Dong. It's actually not that bad of an assignment, but it was just funny. We had to create movie cast for a book we were reading and explain why we cast the actors in each role. We created Tyler Perry's The Scarlet Letter and just put Tyler Perry in every part. I'm fairly sure we got a good grade. This would make a terrifying film. In gym class, we had a fitness contest. Teacher must have goofed up, because 10 sit-ups were 1 point and each bench hop was 10. Stand on one side of the bench with both hands on it and hop over it. Sit-ups were first, so I did 10 and stopped. I looked at the others powering out 60-70, then came bench hop, and as they were all cramped from sit-ups, I powered out about 100. Congrats, you won gym. My biology teacher during my senior year wanted us to collect all these plant samples in winter on the west coast of Canada. Yeah, about 75% of the plants she assigned us weren't blooming at all during this time. To be fair, she was from South Africa, but honestly, maybe research the area before assigning a project like that. It's impossible to find dandelions and maple leaves when it's freaking January. You can't find maple leaves during the playoffs either unless you work on a golf course. 3rd grade, create something that serves a purpose but has never been invented before. For those wondering, I wrapped a coat hanger around a handheld fan and put an ice cream cone in it. Never got to do much field testing. but I'm pretty sure it melted just as quickly. Faster, convection being a thing and all that. The one where they test if you read the test over before answering. First question was to read everything carefully. Last was telling you to not answer any of them middle questions. I got it every year of elementary school for some stupid reason. 2. In my grade 10 IB math class, one day our teacher was absent and one of the PE teachers subbed in. This guy was an awesome, energetic PE teacher, but knew absolutely nothing about math. So he begins class with assigning us some textbook work, and then telling everyone that there was going to be a test at the end of class. With the IB program being accelerated learning, everyone in the class was freaking out and furiously studying for this surprise test. With about 10 minutes left in class, the teacher tells everyone to take out a piece of paper and to answer the question on the overhead. We had until the end of class to complete our answer. He turns on the projector and the only thing written is "I just got a new boat. What should I name it?" SS. Go frick yourself. Once in high school, we had to pick a classmate and write a poem about them. We'd then have to read it out and have everyone guess who it was about. I had social anxiety and no friends in the class. I wrote the poem about myself. Loophole unlocked. In community college, our sociology professor wanted us to go to Little Tokyo in downtown and ask World War II related questions to anyone who looked Japanese. I decided to drop that class and get a W instead. We dropped something a little different on anyone who looked Japanese and got a different kind of W instead. Our science teacher did not think seatbelts did anything. We disagreed. She told us to do a 5-page paper on why seatbelts are ineffective. She told us not to voice our opinions in it, only present the one side of the argument, her side. If only she then got in a car crash and got saved by a seatbelt after assigning it but before it was due, so she had to end up reading about why what saved her life was useless. Took a business class in high school. The first assignment was learning to sing a song about which presidents were on which bills. There were accompanying arm and body motions. I was aghast. That's hilarious. To write a story about my people's festival of lights instead of writing about Christmas. My people don't celebrate a festival of lights. Yay public elementary school. I was tutoring some Saudi children last year and one of the girls was given a similar assignment. No one knew what it was. Her teacher sent home angrier and angrier notes about why the assignment wasn't handed in, despite several notes from home being written asking what this festival was. Create a Facebook profile for a book character. Easiest grade I ever got. I had this same assignment. We had to do it for Romeo and Juliet. Told to get naked and look at myself in the mirror for homework. For geometry class we had to choreograph a dance to show how lines move through things like translations, dilations, and rotations. Our group never took any of it seriously and we got a 100% on it. That sounds like a cool assignment for a magnet art school. If you had to perform it though, it would be annoying in a public school since you may not be interested in choreography. Write a rap about the Bill of Rights. It was kind of dumb, but looking back at it, it was fun at the time. So, some Broadway is making a bunch of money off this idea. Ahem Hamilton. I had to write the numbers 1-500 when I was in 3rd grade. My mom was the last person to make excuses for me, but she wrote a note to the teacher saying that she told me I didn't have to do it because it was freaking pointless. We did this in 1st grade, except it was a number scroll where each page had 100 boxes for kids to continue writing numbers in and attaching it to their long number scrolls. Complete busy work. Memorize the whole class's name, about 40 students, and we were going to be quizzed on it. This was a freaking Latin class and the first week of high school. I quit the class and took Spanish instead. Lived in Okinawa and went to a Dodds High School for American military children. 9th grade science teacher broke her hip. They shipped her to Hawaii and replaced her with a PE certified instructor. She had no idea what she was doing. 95% of the students refused to do their work since they could use the excuse of the teacher switching and them being oh so confused by the switch in styles. Come end of the year she had to offer extra credits to raise their grades. The assignment: give a presentation on some part of the human body. You get a free 100 added to your grade. I'm sitting pretty with my 97, so frick the report presentation. The kids who did it did terrible, half-ass projects with incorrect info. Teacher literally added a 100 to their overall grade. 117%, 133%. I had a weird class in college that was about how philosophy, sociology, psychology, biology and other things relate to the human brain, but all in a very pop science way. It was kind of the fun fact or cool trick class. We had one assignment where we had to go outside and write down everything we could hear. But not like birds chirping or car going by. We had to write onomatopoeia like tweet tweet or vroom vroom. But if you went that common cliche with your sound words, you'd get a bad grade. Title pages marked on the quality of our artwork in math and science. In high school, never did one. To pick up a piece of wood or shell or arc and discuss how it represents you as a person. I have never felt more uncomfortable and stupid in front of other adults. This hunk of dirt is crumbly, like my sanity. Very hippie Oprah Rainbow Guru crap. AP Statistics class. Teacher wanted to prove a point about guessing on tests or something. He gave us a Scantron sheet with 25 questions and told us to bubble in random answers. He then applied a curve, so the person with the most right questions got 100% and graded from there. I think I got a 10% or something. It wasn't a test grade, thank God, but it was a quiz grade. The worst assignments I got was not really for a grade, but school fundraisers. They varied in scope throughout the years, usually ranging from wrapping paper to magazines. They were always overpriced crap and most fundraisers only gave the school 10 cents to every dollar sold. We had to write an essay about how the Hobbit animated film, from the 70s or so, could be interpreted as a Christian allegory. One of the prompts the teacher gave was to think about how the ring could be seen as a divine gift from God to help Bilbo succeed. I did not enjoy that one. Whoever thought of the One Ring as a divine gift obviously didn't read the book very well. The Kettle Project. Minimum 4 pages on the history and development of kettles. In HS, I had a permanent substitute for our geometry class. It was evident that she had no clue how to teach geometry or even do the math. This is just one of the bogus assignments. Write 5 math quotes from Stand and Deliver. She was such a bad teacher that she influenced me to become a math teacher. 7 years later, I am having students take interest in scientific and mathematical discussions and learning in a very high need area. I couldn't be any happier. Learning English. We had to write all irregular verbs with alphabet soup. I refused to do it and turned out just fine. Hope you still pose the class. In my first year of university we took a test worth 25% of our grade that was so filled with errors that it was borderline incomprehensible. Multiple choice questions with answer options from a different question. True or false questions like, how long ago approximately did we separate from chimpanzees? There were 90 students in an exam hall writing this test. The supervisors did their best. It ended up being bell curved 23% upwards because the average grade was 45%. I recently had to take notes on a paragraph, then use my notes to write a paragraph about the topic of the notes. So I was made to rewrite a paragraph over the course of 2 days. Our 9th grade English teacher told us a long, rambling story about his father's life, then assigned us all to write a page-long essay on how his father was a hero. I had to make a website for a high school class in 1999. That wasn't a stupid assignment, but the way it was graded was, I was a nerd and I created a website on my personal server. The problem is that the entire thing was written in PHP. I turned it in along with a copy of the source code and I got an F because it wasn't in HTML and the teacher didn't understand it. Freaking website was basically an e-commerce site with a shopping cart and everything. Pisses me off just thinking about it. I have had to do Cell City 3 times. Basically, draw something that can be an analogy for a cell and then within it draw things that could be considered to be analogies for individual organelles. Mind-numbingly easy, incredibly boring, and completely uninformative. My friend did a M-Lab for that assignment. Got a 95. In junior high, I had a teacher that wouldn't let us go to lunch until everyone laughed for 2 minutes straight. If she saw someone not laughing, she started the clock over again. Finally, we were allowed to go to lunch 10 minutes late after lots of forced hangry laughter from peed off 14-year-olds. Lawyers, public defenders of Reddit, what is the dumbest case you have ever had to argue? Client was charged with violating his probation by failing to provide a drug screen. His defense: he tried so hard he sharted, so it's not like he chose to not give a screen. 30-some-odd-year-old man testifying to that in court, straight-faced, that I had to duck behind the podium to stop laughing. If he took a crap, you must have quit. I represented a guy who asked Chick-fil-A if they would donate anything as a giveaway for a car show he was running. They agree and hand him like 300 free chicken sandwich coupons. The thing is, there was no car show. The guy just convinced them there was and pocketed all the coupons. For those wondering, this is theft by deception. Chick-fil-A is theoretically out like $4 per sandwich. Chick-fil-A doesn't sue, they just tell the cops and they take care of the rest. I didn't handle final disposition, but he'd have gotten probation. Dude beat off in the library. The librarian saw him. They collected his semen from the carpet and the DNA matched. There was a video. We went to trial. Client hired accountant. Accountant did work. Client decided not to pay accountant. Accountant sends me demand letter for full sum plus interest. Since their contract stipulated there'd be interest for late payment, I convince accountant to settle for full amount owing under contract, but no interest. Client doesn't pay. Accountant files statement of claim and gets summary judgment for amount owing, interest, and legal fees. I don't act for that client anymore. I had to prosecute a woman in the Tampa Bay area because she had received a citation for not having her cat on a leash while it was outdoors. The poor old lady brought in pictures of her outdoor cat to show how cute it was. I'm not even fully convinced she owned the cat, as all she did to care for it was put some food and water outside by her shed. At that point I was fully convinced of two things. The first being that my civic duty had been more than satisfied by imposing a fine upon this poor old woman. Also, that Florida was not the place for me, as everyone in the courtroom actually seemed to think getting a fine from this woman was just and worth the taxpayer time wasted to achieve the same. Florida is an interesting place. I represented a condo board that wanted to evict a woman. The condo bylaws allowed for up to 2 cats, provided the board gave permission. This woman had 19 cats, none of which had approval. This woman showed up to court and argued that she shouldn't be evicted since there were only 6 cats. Once had to defend a juvie charged with animal cruelty for fricking mom's Pomeranian. Since mom had caught him red-handed, or whatever, choices of defense were limited. But, since the statute defined animal cruelty as inflicting unnecessary pain or torture on an animal, I argued that the defendant hadn't violated the statute because he'd used shaving cream as lube. If he hadn't, that would have been unnecessary pain or torture. Judge ruled against my client, of course, and nearly locked me up as well just on general principles. The life of a PD. Mom's Pomeranian is all distended. You did not use cream as intended. My friend represented the city in a theft case. He was forced to prosecute a one-legged elderly man who took some cans from a curbside recycling container. Don't frick with city property, folks. Not a lawyer, but my dad works for a hotel chain that got sued. What happened essentially was a son and a father were staying at this resort and were checking out, but had a few hours to kill before their flight. Deciding they wanted to go jet skiing, they asked the lady at the front desk of a place they could go to. She suggested a place that was no way affiliated with the hotel, was just a company nearby. Well, they go jet skiing, but the dad falls off his jet ski and the son drives over him and kills his dad. So instead of realizing, hey, that's a tragic accident, they sue, not the ski company that rented them the jet ski ice, no, the hotel where they asked where they could jet ski. Public defender here. Just last week I had a client who was charged with kicking in somebody's door to steal a kitten. Quite literally a cat burglar. I chuckled. I have 2 court stories. Ones I heard secondhand but still good, if you don't mind. The first I heard while at lunch with the state prosecutor and public defender. The case was pretty cut and dry. Guy robbed a bank at gunpoint. Teller gave him the money in a bank bag and pressed the silent alarm. Police show up quickly and she gives a description of the guy. Cops are able to catch him not far away. He dropped the bank bag in the pursuit, so they had that against him. Never found the gun, but the teller positively IDs him, so whatever. Case is presented in court and the jury goes back to deliberate. Should have taken a very short time, the prosecutor figures, but winds up being forever. They finally come out and give a guilty verdict. The prosecutor later finds out that the jury deliberation was held up by a single woman who must have seen too much NSYS or something because she wouldn't shut up about wanting to see the gun as proof. The rest of the jury was ready to vote guilty, but she just would not shut up. Then one of the other female jurors shut her up. Where's the gun? I want to see the gun. He isn't guilty if they don't find a gun anywhere. Listen you biatch. You want to know where that gun is? He hid it, so that when you release him on this idiotic pretense, he can come and rob your butt. The woman quickly shut up and they all voted in favor of guilty. The other case was a paternity case dealing with the child of a teenager. The DNA results showed that the child was not that of the girl's current boyfriend, but she insisted that he was the only man she had slept with. The judge asked her to really think back to the time in question and consider any times she had slept with other men in the room or whatever. The new mother explained that well, there was one time she and her friend had slept with their boyfriends in the same room, but they both used the condom. What do you mean? They both used the condom, the judge asks. The girl proceeds to explain that they only had one condom at the time, so the friend and her guy frick then turned the condom inside out for the now new mom and her guy to use. It was quickly ruled that the baby belonged to the friend's boyfriend. That last story, my god. Obligatory not me, but I watched while I clerked for a judge. A cokehead shot his cokehead friend in a dispute about the latter smoking more than his fair share. The guy who was shot's girlfriend drives him to the but has warrants, so literally kicks him out of the car and speeds off. He only got shot in the arm, so the hospital had him patched up in no time and he told the cops the whole story while still on those good hospital drugs. Flash forward to trial. The men are friends again, and the guy who was shot has written a letter in the most shockingly beautiful cursive stating, "I verily swear that Bob did not shoot me. I don't know who did. Thank you." He also recorded a crappy cell phone video where he verily swears. Even the guy's defense attorney was convinced the letters were actually more damning than the confession. They didn't even ask their own client questions on the stand, they just allowed him to testify, which is the ethical way attorneys balance their client's right to testify without supporting perjury. But wouldn't you know it, the jury found him not guilty. Everyone including the shooter was visibly shocked. He got to go home scot-free. When the jury was questioned they were basically, the other guy verily swore. Juries, you never know. I studied this case in a law class, and it's hilariously stupid, but it went to the Washington Supreme Court. A 5-year-old moved an old lady's chair before she sat in it, and she fell over. She sued the 5-year-old for battery. The court found that 5-year-olds can indeed be liable for a tort. I defended a conversion case, essentially, a civil theft allegation, where the parties were fighting over possession of a giant collection of Lord of the Rings memorabilia, like tens of thousands of dollars worth. I know those books backwards and forwards. I occasionally worked lines into the pleadings. It would have been intolerable not to. My favorite was oft evil will shall evil ma. Not a lawyer, but in my previous job, loss prevention, we had to go to court almost weekly for our cases. While waiting, there was a woman that was on the stand for prostitution. She had a translator, and the translator, lawyer, and judge negotiated. Judge says translator, please let your client know that I could send her to jail for this. Translator does. Translator, please ask your client if she would be able to afford a $100 fine. The defendant very loudly says, "Be please, I have $300 in my pocket right now." Judge slams the gavel, the fine will be $300 then. Father is a personal injury attorney. Heard this story from a circle of his friends. Woman, driving at night, ends up running over a drunk in the middle of the road. Turns out the drunk is rich. Woman decides to sue his estate for the injuries sustained to her neck when her car went over his body. Not my client. but I listened to a hilarious plea negotiation for a granny who was busted for a DUI. She was like 83 and arrested driving a boat off a caddy. Anyway, negotiations were going well until the prosecutor, who was flipping through pages and pages of this granny's rap sheet, gasps and says, "Me Moore was tried for attempted murder in 1973. Witty barbs were traded. The defense attorney argued the merits of Granny's acquittal, and eventually the prosecutor offered a reasonable plea, but not until after much speculation about whether Granny did it." This isn't from the lawyer's point of view but the defendant's. My dad isn't a doctor. He had a patient come in with an eye infection. Since he is not an ophthalmologist, he could not diagnose or treat a disease of the eye. He gives the lady some eye drops to help with the pain, and tells her to go see an eye doc ASAP to get the infection actually treated. BTW, he sent her home with written instructions too. So lady goes home and never sees the eye doctor. Infection gets worse. She ends up needing a cornea transplant because she's a freaking idiot. Then she sues my dad for malpractice and somehow freaking won. Luckily my dad's malpractice insurance covered it, but JFC. The kicker is that malpractice suits in my state have a time limit to file. Hers was filed right before the time limit expired, because that's how long it took for her to find a lawyer to take the case. Not me, but a friend's dad was a public defender for a drug dealer and they had freaking video, with audio of the deal going down that the guy still wanted to go to court. I have no idea why. After sitting on a jury, I have little to no faith that any jury trial will end in the obvious and rational verdict. Not lawyer but family self-defended, so kinda. My grandparents sold their house. Right on closing day, the buyers called them up and told them they were withholding $30,000 from the sale price because my grandparents had left holes in the walls from paintings and such, removed trees and plants from the backyard, and removed an entertainment unit, which was specifically listed as not included in the sale documents. Literally wasted 6 months of our lives defending ourselves, gave my grandma an ulcer from the stress, and they lost in the end and were forced to pay for pain and suffering and whatnots. They literally had zero ground to stand on. We think that they were assuming that most people couldn't afford to be out $25,000 and potential legal fees when they had just bought a new home, but my grandparents were downsizing and not in the mood to be fricked with. My grandpa defended himself, and man oh man, he is scary as crap to be questioned by as a grandfather, let alone on a witness stand. Apparently the wife of the buying couple almost cried when questioned by him. The judge later complimented his legal abilities. Haha. The neighbor testified that no plants had been taken, and that the buyers had basically tried to coerce him into not testifying that the holes in the walls were tiny as crap and to be expected, and the wall unit BS was just the craziest, being that it was literally listed in the sale as not included. It wasn't built in but looked like it. The sad thing is my grandma literally cleaned the house spotless, like she already has a house clean enough to eat off the floors, and left them a welcome gift basket. They're such freaking nice people, and two buttholes decided they could be easily fricked with. People who try to take advantage of the elderly are among the worst kinds of scum. Every time I do an eviction, me, did you pay the rent? Tenant, no. M, why not? T, X, Y, and Z are wrong with the unit. M, okay, did you tell the landlord or put anything in writing? T, no. This is mostly because I work in law and we have professional tenants. They know I'll never be able to track them down to get payment after I evict them. They also know they can extend their free stay by making the case go to court. Solicitor I did work experience with had a pretty dumb case. Client was prosecuted for using a hidden camera to take inappropriate photos of women. He was let go from his job when a co-worker read the entire story in a newspaper and showed his boss, who chose to fire the client as the company had many female workers who would be uncomfortable working with him. Client even has to move house to a new area because of the publicity. Client then tries to sue his old employer for wrongful termination. He lost. I charged the defendant with introduction of contraband in a jail. He was arrested on a separate warrant and smuggled them inside his butt to pass the time behind bars. Deputies located him strung out in his cell, and his excuse was that a group of scary men burst into his cell with the drugs and forced him to get high. Cameras easily disproved it. Ghost duress defense. Works every time. Not me, but when I lived overseas with the military I decided to sit in on a trial. Because why not? The trial was about a guy who bought TVs on base, which are somewhat cheaper because of no taxes, and used them for a private business of his off base, which was a mixture of an American breakfast restaurant in the morning and a Buffalo Wild Wings in the afternoon and evenings with a trivia and sports games. Anyways, living in East Asia at the time, it was nice to get a slice of home. Apparently, buying stuff on base and using it off base for a profit is counted as black marketing because he was exploiting the advantages of the exchange on base department store. He ending up being convicted, and the TVs he bought with his own money were confiscated and the people that took them weren't too gentle with the wiring. The owner eventually had to close the restaurant because the TV gimmick was what really drew in business. Real shame. I had a client who was arrested for a misdemeanor charge. When he was at the jail and going through booking, the guards noticed that he was digging in the back of his pants. Long story short, the guards did a strip search and found a huge bag of M way up inside in this guy's butt. To make it worse, there was a video of guards holding him down while the jail doctor pulled the bag out of his butt. Needless to say, he was charged with possession of methamphetamine. What happened? He decided to claim it wasn't his and that he didn't possess it. Yes, you read that right. This moron actually wanted to argue that he didn't possess that M, despite the fact that it was up inside of his butt. In fact, he was so adamant about him not possessing it that he decided to testify against my advice, mind you, and tell the jury that 1. He didn't know it was there, and 2. That he, quote, didn't have nothing up his butt. Jury deliberated for under 5 minutes. I counted. Guilty verdict. Not me, but I was watching a case where this kid was throwing burning dog crap on his neighbor's porch and running away. The public defender just looked like he could give 2 shoots and forced the kid to plead guilty and got 4 years in a juvenile detention center. While working as a law clerk, I saw a case where a woman had sued her ex-husband for child support. The couple had lived abroad, where the husband had an all-costs-paid, high-salary executive position, and the woman was a stay-at-home mom. The woman cheated on him with the tennis coach. They divorced and she moved back to Sweden. The husband moved back as well and claimed he was unable to pay child support because he was now unemployed and all his savings, like $1.2 million, had gone to the apartment he bought, a purchase he justified by saying there was no other apartment available. Another story, young guy gets charged with jumping a subway turnstile and assaulting an officer who tried to eject him. Case goes to trial and the public defender says his client is not guilty. In fact, the guard was the aggravator and assaulted his client, who only acted in self-defense. The prosecutor shows the court CCTV footage which clearly shows the guy jumping the turnstile, fighting the guard and then kicking him in the groin. The defender, who somehow had missed the existence of the video, asked for a short break and then changes his position. A lady was abducted by a stranger at gunpoint from a CVS at 1 AM, forced to drive 2 counties over and then up-head. The client maintained that the encounter was consensual and that he was just too good looking to have to force women to hook up with him. This is only sort of answering the question, but it's my favorite thing that has happened in court, so I'm posting it anyway. I used to work out of a courthouse in Virginia where attire was taken very seriously and the wrong attire was seen as a sign of disrespect toward the court. A guy showed up for his case wearing really baggy jean shorts and an oversized t-shirt. We were in a particularly strict courtroom that day and the judge's head deputy told this young man that he had to leave because he was dressed inappropriately for court. He didn't cause too much of a fuss and stepped out into the hallway. His case got called a few minutes later, and when the judge asked the attorney why the defendant wasn't standing in front of him, the attorney explained that he had been asked to leave the courtroom because of his outfit. The judge looked peeved and the attorney quickly said, "Your Honor, to be fair, he's in front of you on an indecent exposure charge, so he's dressed a lot better than he was at the time of the offense." The judge did not find this amusing, but the rest of the courtroom totally cracked up. You've encountered the lost treasure of Captain Gus Fishhead. Subscribe to receive some of his gold. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.